The air on Zetra station was dry and heavy, filled with the smell of rust, oil, and desperation. Ships came here to unload cargo, trade spare parts, and sometimes to forget about the galaxy outside. It wasn't a place for kindness or hope. It was a place where survival was all that mattered. Kyle, a human trader, walked through the crowded market street with a box of supplies under his arm. He had landed his small cargo ship, the Sunrunner, just a few hours ago. He didn't like this place. But his ship needed fuel, and he needed to trade for food and tools. As he passed broken stalls and shouting voices, one voice stopped him. It wasn't loud, but it was soft and trembling, and it didn't sound like someone selling anything usual. Please, just a small box of food. I can work. I can clean your ship. Or you can take me. I won't fight. Just, please. Kyle turned. His eyes landed on a thin alien woman sitting on the cold ground. Her skin was pale blue with a soft purplish tint. Her arms wrapped tightly around a small child who looked barely conscious. Her hair was tangled, her clothes torn. But it was the look in her eyes that made Kyle freeze. She wasn't begging for money, she wasn't asking for help, she was giving up. I'll trade myself, she whispered again. Just something to eat for my child. No one around even looked at her. People walked past like she wasn't even there. To them, she was just another lost alien in a broken world. Kyle knelt slowly beside her. What's your name? He, asked gently. The woman looked surprised. She stared at him for a moment, then lowered her eyes. Sorry. And your child? His name is Relo. He hasn't eaten in 2 days. Kyle looked down at the child. The boy was very thin, his face pale and still. He wasn't crying anymore. That was the worst sign. When children stop crying, it means they've stopped hoping. Kyle stood and looked around. A few nearby traders watched him with confused or mocking faces, expecting him to ignore her like everyone else. He reached into his bag and pulled out 2 sealed food bars and a water pack. He placed them gently in Sari's hands. Eat this, both of you. Sari blinked. But I can't pay you. I didn't ask for payment. But I offered myself. I don't buy people, Kyle said firmly. Come with me. You can rest on my ship, it's safe there. Sari hesitated, her hands shaking. Why? Why would you help someone like me? Kyle shrugged. Because I know what it's like to be alone, and no one should have to sell themselves for food. Back. On the Sunrunner, Kyle opened the small medical kit and gave Rilo a nutrient injection. The child finally opened his eyes and drank some water. Sari sat silently nearby, watching every move with cautious eyes. I can clean the deck, she said quietly. Or help you fix panels. I'm good with tools. You don't have to do anything, Kyle replied. Just rest. But I owe you. You don't owe me anything. That night, Sari curled up with Rilo in the small guest bunk. Kyle gave them extra blankets and closed the door softly behind him. He sat in the cockpit, staring out the viewport at the stars. He had come here for trade. Instead, he found someone who reminded him why humans were feared and respected in the galaxy, not for their strength, but for their hearts. The next morning, Sari looked stronger. She had cleaned her face and hair. Rilo was awake, sitting beside her, chewing slowly on a food bar. His small eyes lit up when Kyle entered the room. Sari stood quickly. Thank you again. Kyle nodded. You're welcome. She hesitated. You could have ignored me. Like the others. I could have, he said. But I didn't. Sari lowered her eyes. In my culture, when someone saves your life, you belong to them. You become their responsibility. Kyle smiled softly. In my culture, when someone saves a life, it's called being human. Sari woke up early the next morning on the Sunrunner. She opened her eyes and saw the soft metal ceiling above her. For a moment, she forgot where she was, but when she turned and saw her son Rilo breathing quietly beside her, she remembered. They were alive. They were safe for now. She quietly stood up and looked around the small guest room. It was clean, warm, and had things she had not seen in many months. A folded towel, clean water, and even a soft blanket. Her hands touched the wall gently, as if checking it was real. Sari whispered a silent thanks to whatever stars were watching over her. But in her heart, she believed she now owed something to the man who saved her. She stepped into the hallway and found a cleaning cloth from the storage bin. She started wiping the walls, the floors, and the corners of the ship without making a sound. Her culture taught her one thing clearly. If someone gives you kindness, you must return it with action. Kyle entered the hallway half awake, rubbing his eyes. He stopped when he saw her cleaning. "You don't have to do that," he said. Sari stood up quickly. "I want to. It's the least I can do." Kyle looked at her for a long moment. "Sari, listen. You're not here to work for me. You and Relo are guests. But I must repay you." Kyle shook his head. "You don't owe me anything. You were trying to survive. That's not a crime." Sari didn't answer right away. She had no words. Kindness without cost. This was something she hadn't known for a long time. Later that day, Kyle made simple food, hot soup from dehydrated vegetables. It wasn't much, but to Sari and Relo, it tasted like a royal meal. Rilo even smiled, and for the first time in many days he spoke. "Is this your ship?" he asked Kyle, voice small. "Yep," Kyle replied. "It's not big, but it's home. It smells clean." Kyle laughed. "That's because your mom cleaned it this morning." Sari blushed slightly and looked down. Kyle noticed, but said nothing. After the meal, Kyle began checking the ship systems in the engine room. Sari followed, watching quietly. When a tool slipped from his hand and rolled across the floor, she quickly picked it up and handed it to him. "You're good with tools?" he asked. She nodded. "My father was a ship mechanic. I used to help him before the war." Kyle looked at her carefully. "You can help me if you want, but not because you have to, because you choose to." Sari looked surprised. She had never been asked to choose anything in years. Hours passed, and the three of them started falling into a rhythm. Relo rested and played quietly with old wires Kyle gave him. Sari fixed a loose panel in the kitchen area. Kyle double-checked the ship's navigation system and made a short jump to a quiet moon for refueling. During the night, Sari sat alone in the cockpit while Kyle slept. She stared at the stars in silence. Her thoughts were heavy. Why was this human helping them? What did he want? Back on her homeworld, humans were not trusted. Stories spoke of humans being too dangerous, too emotional. But Kyle was gentle. Not weak, but soft in a way that made her feel safe. Relo walked into the cockpit and climbed onto her lap. "Do we have to leave again soon?" he asked. Sari hugged him. "I don't know, Relo. Can we stay here?" She didn't answer, but deep inside she wanted to say yes. The next day, Kyle offered Sari a real choice. "I'll be heading toward one of the outer systems," he said. "It's a calm place. Not many ships go there. You can come with me, or I can drop you off at a safer station than Zetra." Sari thought for a long time. "I want to come with you," she said finally, "if you'll allow it." Kyle smiled. "Of course. You're always welcome here." For the first time, Sari didn't feel like a passenger or a burden. She felt like part of the crew. That evening, they shared a quiet meal. Relo was laughing at a story Kyle told about a robot that kept falling over. Sari watched them both, a small smile on her face. She had sold herself in the market, thinking her life was over. But now, for the first time in years, she had something she never thought she'd feel again. Hope. For the next few days, the journey through space was calm. Kyle set a course toward a quiet moon on the outer rim. It was a place with clean air, water, and fuel, everything he needed to restock before heading to the next trade zone. Inside the ET ship, Sari was slowly becoming more comfortable. She helped fix small problems with the wiring and even cooked a simple meal with Kyle's supplies. Relo started smiling more often, playing with the cleaning bot and asking questions about stars and ships. But the peace didn't last. One morning, Kyle found Sari holding Relo tightly in the passenger bunk. The child was sweating, his skin a dough, pale gray and his body shaking. Sari's face was filled with fear. "He's burning up," she whispered. "Something is wrong." Kyle rushed to the med kit and scanned Relo's vitals with the small health scanner. The screen flashed red. Severe. Infection. His oxygen level was low and his body was weak. Sari's voice cracked. "He needs medical help. I've seen this before on my planet. Without treatment, he won't survive." Kyle stared at the screen, then looked at Sari. "There's only one place nearby with the equipment to help him, but it's not safe." "Where?" "Station." "K9, he replied. "It's a black market port, no laws, full of criminals, smugglers, bounty hunters." Sari didn't hesitate. "Take us there." Kyle looked at Rilo again, then nodded. "Hold on." The ship jumped into hyperdrive, pushing its engines to the limit. As they approached Station K9, Kyle turned to Sari. "We have to be careful. People on this station might recognize your species. If they know who you are, I'll hide my face," she said. "Just help Rilo." Station K9 was a giant ring in space, surrounded by broken ships and dangerous satellites. As the Sunrunner docked, a robotic voice welcomed them with cold words. "Docking approved. No security provided. Enter at your own risk." Kyle grabbed a backpack, filled it with credits and the medical scanner. He looked at Sari. "Stay close." They stepped into the dirty, crowded halls of the station. Strange creatures and suspicious humans moved through the shadows. Kyle ignored the stares. He asked quietly for help, and finally an old doctor with a metal arm agreed. For a price. Kyle paid half his trade credits without blinking. The doctor examined Relo carefully and injected him with rare antibiotics and oxygen boosters. After what felt like hours, the fever began to fall. Relo's breathing slowed. His color returned. Sari held her son close, tears in her eyes. "Thank you. Thank you." Kyle nodded, exhausted. But just as they prepared to leave, a sharp voice echoed from behind. "Well, well, what do we have here? A human trader and an interesting guest." Kyle turned slowly. A tall man with robotic eyes and two guards stood there. His badge showed he worked for a bounty guild. The man pointed at Sari. "She's not just anyone, is she?" Kyle stepped in front of her. "She's under my protection." The bounty hunter laughed. "You really think that means anything here? Her kind has a bounty on several worlds. She's rare, worth a fortune." "I don't sell people," Kyle said, his voice calm but firm. The bounty hunter smiled. "Then I'll just take her." But Kyle didn't back down. He reached, slowly, for a small button on his wristband. "I've connected my ship's core to this device. You touch her, I blow the whole dock." The bounty hunter paused. "You're bluffing." "Maybe," Kyle said. "Want to test it?" There was a long silence. Then the man growled and waved his guards away. "You'll regret this, human. She's trouble." Kyle didn't answer. He took Sari and Relo by the hand and led them back to the Sunrunner as fast as he could. Once they were safely back on board, Kyle locked the doors and started the engine. Sari sat with Relo in her arms. The child was sleeping peacefully now, his fever gone. "You didn't have to risk yourself for us," she said quietly. "I did," Kyle replied. "Because I care." Sari looked at him with new eyes. "You could have traded me for money, sold me for protection, but you didn't." "I told you before, Sari," Kyle said. "You're not a thing to be owned. You're a person, and so is your son." She didn't speak for a while, but something changed in her heart. She had been running, hiding, surviving. Now, she was starting to believe they had a future. As the ship left the dangerous zone of Station K9, the stars ahead looked a little brighter. And in that moment, inside a small cargo ship floating through space, 3 broken souls began to heal together. One act of kindness at a time. The ship hummed softly as the Sunrunner glided through the quiet space lanes. Outside the windows, distant stars flickered like tiny lamps against the vast darkness. Inside, Kyle was at the controls, his fingers steady on the panels. Sari sat, nearby, cradling Relo, who was slowly gaining strength each day. The child's cheeks were pinker, and his small hands gripped his mother's finger tightly. Life was simple here, but Kyle knew it would not stay that way for long. One evening, as Kyle checked the navigation system, Sari approached quietly. "Kyle," she began, her voice low, "there is something I need to tell you." He looked up, curious. "I am not just a refugee," she said. "I was once an advisor to the council of my people." Kyle raised an eyebrow. "Council advisor? Like a diplomat or leader?" "Yes," Sari replied. "Before the war destroyed our planet, I helped make decisions for our world. I knew many leaders, scientists, and warriors." Kyle nodded slowly. "Why did you never say this before?" Sari sighed. "Because after the war, my title meant nothing. My people scattered, and most who survived were forgotten or hunted. I hid who I was to protect myself and my son." Kyle thought for a moment. "You're more than what you look like now. You have a past that can help many." Sari looked out the window. "But to some, that makes me a target." Kyle stood and walked to her side. "Then I'll protect you." As the days passed, Kyle noticed changes in Sari. She was no longer the frightened woman he met in the market. Her eyes held quiet strength and intelligence. One afternoon, alarms sounded suddenly in the cockpit. "Incoming ship," Kyle announced, checking the radar. Sari's expression tightened. "They are bounty hunters." Kyle cursed under his breath. "How did they find us?" Sari placed a hand on his arm. "I think someone reported us." The ship's hull shook as small laser blasts hit the shield. Kyle gripped the controls. "We can't outrun them forever." Sari moved quickly to the control panel. Her fingers danced over the holographic display. "Wait," she said. "I know a way." Kyle watched as she entered commands. Suddenly, the Sunrunner powered down most systems and became invisible to normal scanners. The bounty hunters were confused and fired blindly into empty space. Kyle grinned. "Nice move." Sari smiled softly. "Your kindness deserves smart protection." Later, after the danger passed, Kyle asked, "How did you learn to do that?" Sari explained, "My people's technology was advanced. I studied ship defense systems and diplomacy. It helped me survive." Kyle looked at her with new respect. "You're not just a survivor. You're a fighter and a thinker." Sari shook her head. "I never wanted to fight. I wanted peace. But now I must protect my son." Kyle nodded. "And I'll help you." Together, that night, as the ship moved steadily toward the next station, Kyle and Sari sat in the small common area. "I have a question," Kyle said. "What do you want now? Where do you want to go?" Sari thought for a moment. "A place where my son can grow up safe. A home where I can help others like us." Kyle smiled. "You have one here if you want it." Sari looked at him, gratitude shining in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "For everything." The small farming moon glowed softly below as the Sunrunner made its final descent. The air was fresh, with the scent of wildflowers and damp earth. This was a place far from war, far from crowded stations and dangerous bounty hunters. Kyle guided the ship smoothly onto a quiet landing pad near his modest home. The fields stretched beyond, green and calm. Sari watched the world outside the window. For the first time in a long time, she felt hope stir inside her heart. "This place is beautiful," she said softly. Kyle smiled. "It's home. Not much, but it's safe." Relo, now full of energy and curiosity, ran around the small yard chasing butterflies. His laughter filled the air, light and free. Inside the house, Kyle opened a small storage room and pulled out clean clothes for Sari and Rilo. The alien woman looked at them with surprise. "They are simple but clean," Kyle said. "You need to feel comfortable." Sari changed, and when she came out, Kyle barely recognized her. The dirt and exhaustion of the past months were gone. Her skin looked healthy and her eyes bright. Kyle offered his hand. "Welcome home." Sari took it, feeling a warmth she hadn't felt in a long time. Days passed, and Sahri began planting seeds outside the house. They were flowers and plants from her home planet, small reminders of what she had lost and what she hoped to rebuild. Kyle helped her dig and water the soil. They worked side by side, learning from each other. One evening, as the sun set, Sahri sat on the porch, holding Rilo close. "Why did you do all this for us?" she asked Kyle. He looked at the horizon. "Because, in a universe full of fear and hate, kindness is the greatest power. You reminded me that people matter no matter where they come from." Sahri smiled softly. "You gave me a home when I thought I had none." Kyle nodded. "And you gave me hope when I thought I had lost it." Word slowly spread among nearby colonies about the human trader who helped an alien mother and her child. Some were skeptical, others curious, but none could deny the change Kyle brought to this quiet corner of space. Sahri began teaching children from nearby settlements about her culture, languages, and stories of peace. Rilo played with the other kids, growing strong and happy. The farming moon became a small beacon of friendship between species. One clear night, Kyle and Sahri stood outside under the stars. "Do you think we can build a future here?" Kyle asked. Sahri looked up, her eyes shining. "I know we can." They stood together, two beings from different worlds, connected by hope and kindness. In the vast universe, they had found something rare and precious, a true home.